Painting that we're working on, our next part of this to make these really glow and come out are going to be two things. One is this contrast of the blue, and the other is going to be the value differences that run in through here. And so playing with that blue, just looking at the value of that blue, it's a little bit darker than somewhere in between these two as far as how dark it is. And then when we get into, the orange behind it, it's really almost the same value as that. So having this little light edge on here is going to be really important. But when we get into the darker shadow areas of these, look at how much that value drops down. It goes even darker, even darker. We're about that value. So we're going to be, 4 or 5 values darker when we get into that dark part. And then looking at the yellows here, our lightest part of the yellows are up in this value 9. But when we get into the dark part of those yellows, find our way in through here, even darker than that. Yeah, it's getting to be about that dark. And then just a little heads up. I mean, look at this sample that I've got. Doesn't this look like an incredibly dark color? And how could we possibly have anything in these yellow trees that's that dark? Look at this when I set this on here. It matches. It matches this dark down in here. And in here, same thing. It's same kind of color, same kind of darkness. And then notice this one, it's a little bit lighter, but it matches pretty good with these darker pieces underneath of this orange tree in here. And see, that's even maybe just slightly darker than what we have. And some of these are going to be that mid-tone, that dark mid-tone. This is not black, but and I don't think I have a black on here. Oh, I do have a black on here. Let me just cut a hole. This handy dandy hole punch is really handy to compare colors. And see, we don't want to use black. I can actually see that little brown that's there. And even this trunk, well, that trunk can go black. That trunk can go black. And these dark areas over in here, they can go black. This area next to the figures, that goes really close to that black. This is the other interesting thing. I love this little wet and wet that I did using sort of a tan color and then dropping, I think that was, it was either burnt sienna with ultramarine blue put in it, or else it was my permanent brown. But look how it matches really quite nicely with these darker areas up in here. When you see this dark part, and then let's just dark into some light, that little stringy stuff through there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that little stringy stuff to happen, but I do like that little combination. And then our last thing that I was thinking about here, so that's the trees. Handy, these color samples. I have bunches of them, and it's fun to sort of play with them. Oh, this is the other one. So that feels like sort of a dull orange, but look how it compares. It's much lighter than that dark area there. And it's pretty close to some of the areas in this tree. It's pretty close to some of those oranges up in there. So that matches pretty close to those oranges. And there's some more that are matching pretty close. So these darker areas are going to be sort of a dark orangey red. Now for the sky. This sky we determined was a value, probably a value 8. Value 8. No, it's darker than that. It's almost a value 6. But now compared to, this is a turquoisey blue, probably phthalo blue. It's going to be a bit darker than that. And this one looks like it's got ultramarine blue on it. it's a bit greener blue and a little bit more intense than what I had there. So let's go ahead and try mixing up, because I think before I do anything else, I really want to establish what's happening with those blues up there. And so let me go ahead and mix a blue, and we can put it on one of my samples. Yes, I kept a hole right here by this sample sheet so that we can check it against that photograph before we put it on. And, oh, needed my brushes. I do have my sponge. The sponge will be handy for when we get to doing some of the other things. And is that going to work for a rag? Got a little bit smaller rag here that I might be able to scrunch a little easier, because remember we were going to paint some blue underneath of at least part of where this orange tree is going to be, and then come back in with the rag to lift some of that blue off. But first we have to mix the blue. Which one of my brushes do I want to use? I'll go ahead and use the 12 here. So I'm wanting this to lean a little bit toward the phthalo side. So let's start with some phthalo blue here. And, you know, this is going to be a little too intense, I'm sure. Try that against that. Yeah, see, that's too green. And so we need to have a little bit of cobalt blue added into there. And I think I want to do cobalt blue rather than using the ultramarine blue, because the ultramarine is going to get it a bit too dark. And I don't want to have that happen. That's what happened over in here. It's that ultramarine blue, although it's a lovely color, isn't always the one we want. And, you know, the other blue that could be possibly used for this is my cerulean blue, but once again, it doesn't feel like it's quite the right color. Now let's try this. So that was cobalt and phthalo blue mixed together. And now let's try that against that sky picture. I'm saying that's pretty darn close. Okay, that's what we're going to work with. So that was about half cobalt blue, half phthalo blue. And now, do I want to pre-wet that area? At least with a, we're going to do it with a damp brush with the paint that I've got here. And I don't want that, I don't want the blue to go everywhere, but I do want it over in this area. And then I've got to come in pretty quickly and lift out what I need to lift out. So let me just dampen this, especially working with the phthalo blue, and we're working around these. And then up in here, let's just not paint it all the way into there. And I've got to get that right out to those edges. Let's dry that. And then I'm going to be flooding some more paint into here to really get that intensity of color. And remember, we had painted some of the edges of these leaves up here, and some of them can go a little bit darker with this blue, but some of them we want to leave light, and I'm leaving some little light splotches, some little light edges. Okay, let's feed this blue into here, because we want that pretty intense. And it's going to come up in here too. Okay. Now let me roll this around just a little tiny bit, and then I need to get that rag on there like ASAP. Now, this is still part of my tree up in here, so let's get that rag up into here. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't bring it into everywhere here because, and maybe I do need to bring some little spots of blue back in between some of these other places. Okay, so let's come in with a slightly smaller brush and really find the edges of this tree, and maybe a few more sky holes back in here. Let those be sky holes. Now I need to make that so that those edges look like leaves, not like hard brush marks. And yeah, there's not much in the way of sky holes back there. Maybe some sky holes up in here, and a few back in there, and a few back in here, and we'll work them across through that area. Okay, now let's see. It feels like there's some sky holes there. And then remember what we were saying, that this was going to be darker, so I can put some of this blue in on top of here, and then we'll put brown in on top of that later. But this is going to help make that stand out. Right now that looks green, but we're going to put brown on top of it, and it will then take that greenness off of there. Okay. And I don't know if I dare. I don't think I dare. There's a hair in here, and I just, Margaret, don't do anything with it right now. But now what I can start working on is, we're going to leave that all alone, but now we can start coming in and doing this little bit darker areas down underneath of the tree here. So, you know, looking at that, remember it was, first we had this orange, red, brown, and so let's play with that one first. Orange, red, brown. Ooh. And I don't know if you can see this one. I had a little bit of vermilion still left in here. I'm going to add just a bit of burnt sienna to it. And soften up that burnt sienna so that I can be using some of it by itself. Okay, so let's see what we can do with a little sponge work here. Dampen that sponge. And now I don't want to just randomly do this everywhere. I want it to come down into a pattern here. And then coming up a little underneath of there, and a little under this, and hopefully Kat doesn't decide she wants to come in here. Now, yeah, it's going to go darker underneath of that part of the, and there's some light coming through back there, but not everywhere. Okay. And then a little right in here. And then we just want just a few tips of darker in here to play with that light. Okay, now I can't do anything with that tree up there. Just want to be sure. Yeah, that's all. Okay. Maybe we can come over into this tree over here. That's going to be a little bit more of a burnt sienna. Remember, we were playing with that. Yeah, this one here. Maybe that needs a little more yellow in it. Let's add We did quin gold underneath there. Let me just add a little quin gold to this. And no, it needs to get dulled down some, so it needs some ultramarine blue added to it. That's turning more into the kind of brown I was thinking of. Yep, I think that's going to work. So let's play once again with that sponge. And better rinse it out because it was pretty red. Oh yeah, let some of that gold still show. We're coming in just to the edge of this tree, and you know, there's some browns that come up into there, but not too many. And that sky hole. And as this gets darker down in here, could use a little darker brown in on that. And just doing this, isn't this cool that when you do this, it then makes that tree look that much brighter. Now the darks in this tree are more of a yellowy orange. So let's mix my new gamboge with a little bit of burnt sienna. Oh yeah, that's making a nice color. What else have we got here that... I need more though. A little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, let's try that. Sponge wrung out as much as possible so we're not picking up too much water. And then I'm going to need to sort of hold it on a long skinny line here, because now I have light areas. Let's keep those light areas. So let me put this in on top of the darker area that I had there. And it's darker all the way underneath it here. I'm going to try and keep as much light as I can. It's a bigger, darker area there and down into here. All right. That's looking interesting. And then I'm seeing maybe just a hint of green, just a hint of green down in here. Maybe more green. It's going to go into what I had done there. Now, whew, okay, so where do we want to go next with this? I do need to go even darker. That was a really dark brown. Let's get some of this and a little burnt ultramarine blue. And chrome gold. Need a little more of the, those need to go a little darker. That's going to be a little darker. I've got a little bit of a red brown on my sponge at the moment. Just be careful not to get too big of patches. I might need to come back in with a little bit of just new gamboge on here. Try that. I used to think painting with the sponge was cheating, but it works so nicely. Ah, yes, this is nice. To get a little bit darker mid-tone, and that's now making that lighter area glow that much more, especially when I bring it around the edges of these darker places. But I don't want to lose my lights. It's so tempting to just sort of put this everywhere, but I don't want to do that because I want those lights to work. I might have to step back from this, and then let's just do a little more yellow in on top of this sky to give him a little more bright glowy feel. Now these undercolors, I'm feeling I don't want to really perk them up too much more, but I do now need some dark green. And let's just mix that right into this brown. Yeah, can dull it down by putting a little bit of the permanent brown, which is a red brown, in with that green. Let's use the sap green maybe. And a little blue in there. Ooh. Too dark. A little sap green in it again. Okay. So we've got some places underneath here which have got a very dark green. Be careful, don't get too crazy with this. Oh, and there's a nice bit down in here. And our figures, I want this pretty dark around our figures, and so this is going to be a space. I want to hold that tree out. And then a little bit on the other side of that tree. Let's put a little down in here. And oh, this bush area here. It's going to be going darker behind there. No, I don't want that green up there really, but I like a little bit down in here. So again. And then just a little bit underneath of there. Okay, let me just rinse that out of my brush. There's a little bit, if we want these buildings to have some life, let's call it life, I'm going to want to make some spaces here that say building. And I want to make a gray. So just that little bit is all it's really going to take for these to look like buildings. Let that blend into that other one, and that's another roof there, and we have a roof line that runs up in here, and to that tree. This is going to have to go quite a bit darker in here. So let me go ahead and mix up that next darker brown. Which one was it that we decided? That had to be as dark as this. That is a ultramarine blue and burnt sienna mixed together, and maybe a little bit of this permanent brown, which is a little more of a red brown. And once again, let's do that with the sponge. Get that wrung out enough. Just want to get the paint a little thicker on the, yeah, that's working better. And that can come down into here a little further. Just let that be a little further there. Clean that sponge out, get back into the new gamboge. And has this dried enough yet? I think it has. Okay, so we want an orangey brown. You know, I have a quinacridone burnt orange here. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, this might be just the tricket. I think that might be just what we want up there. Okay, and okay, a little bit of New Gamboge into it. Yeah, nice little red brown. Yeah, that's actually going to work pretty good. So, and since we've been doing sponge on everybody else, this better be sponged. It's not enough. Not enough. The sponge just sucks up so much paint. And it needs some more intense pieces in there, so I need a little more paint on here. Maybe just a touch of burnt sienna in there. I'm gonna have to be stepping away from this. Oh, this area needed to go just a little bit darker too, didn't it? Time to step back from this. I think I need to stop and let this dry. And then, you know, the next step of this, of course, will be to, yeah, maybe this can be a little more intense down in here. The next step of this will be to establish my darks and my lights. So if I'm done with my midtones, which it's feeling close, I am seeing something that I do want to tone down a little bit here. And we're going to be coming in with some more grays down in this bottom area. But these houses, I feel like this is too light. Margaret, you just dropped water all over here. My hand when I went to wash that sponge. I want these buildings here, but I don't want them to be screaming at me. Don't you get on that, Missy. Kitty is coming and getting interested. Let's just, a little roof line can get lighter. Little roof line can be lighter. Okay, I think that's enough detail that that's looking like houses. And then, you know, maybe this is a little more orange in between some tree things here. Okay. And that tree is going to go darker because so it doesn't matter if stuff's in on top of there. This is going to pick up a little more blue. And maybe there's more than one dark line running through here. It's going to be sunshine. Yes, this needed. And this feeling of sunlight coming in through here in streaks. So having some little streaks of lighter and darker here to make that look like the sun's coming through there, I think is going to be nice.